Yeah, it's pretty exciting, right? Um, Sorry, I'm a dad. So my name is James Long. Yes, I am the pretty guy. This is actually me taking a selfie. Um, so we write code in a lot of different editors, right? These editors all have different behavior about how they like to format your code. What happens when you press enter? What happens when you press tab? They're all slightly different. But what's worse is that we are programmers. We like our opinions. We like things like our style, our code style, because we write code all day. Um, the problem with having differing styles is just that it makes it hard to work on a team, and it makes it hard to move across teams. It makes it hard to move jobs because you're always having to remember the current style that you should be in. But what's even worse is that there's this mental burden as you're writing code. You always have to be manually reformatting your code as you're right after you write a line of code. You have to manually go back and reformat it. It's just a lot of mental burden. But I think we can solve this with tools. The problem is, though, is that the current tooling is not good enough. I love tools like ESLint to catch semantic and bad patterns, things like that in your code, but it's not a formatter. It wasn't built to be a formatter. They added rules for small bits of formatting because it was requested, but it doesn't holistically format your code, and it's so easy to bypass the formatting rules. So I think that we can do better. The result is that in our PRs, we have to do all these nits, and it's just such a time sink, right? It's just it's death by a thousand cuts sometimes, because if you disagree on the style nit, then it's just like bike shedding for a whole day about why you want to do things that are your way. We can solve this. We can get rid of this. In fact, I would say that we are the Knights of Nit. If we were, I did a query on all of the GitHub data in 2016, and there were 30,597 nits. If we estimate 5 to 10 minutes per nit, about average programmer salary, we wasted about $500,000 on this stuff. It's ridiculous. So last year, I hit a breaking point after dealing with all this for years. I was trying to use this newfangled technology called JSX, and it just wasn't indenting in my editor correctly. So I was like, screw this, I'm going to fix this. And so I built Prettier. So Prettier was born. We've had a lot of activity since then. It's been pretty successful. We've put a lot of work into making it actually look really good. The way that Prettier works is it compiles your code to an AST, and then it pretty prints out AST. So it pretty much ignores all of the original style of the code. So it's a lot more consistent. Some pretty high-profile projects have already started to use Prettier, actually, like React Native Web, Immutable.js, Great React App, Jest, and even soon Babel is going to start using it, and even better, React is going to start using it soon. In fact, they already have this PR open, and so it's green, and so yeah, they're going to have it pretty soon. So let's take a quick look at at how this works. So we have this code. In particular, the complicated function is too long for the screen. Prettier will not only format everything correctly, like it moved things around just a little bit, but the complicated function, the call to complicated function was actually broken up across lines. So it actually knows how to wrap your code. If you give it a maximum line length, it knows how to wrap your code. It turns out that that's actually a critical piece of how it knows how to format your code, because it knows the context that code is in. If you don't do that, you just can't have a realistic, real-world formatter. So it turns out that that's actually super critical. This is something that I tweeted out when I first started the project, and I barely got it working. So you can see that it's actually giving Prettier the width of the editor, and it's reformatting on the fly. And so it's able to restructure the code as it's bumped in too short. So this shows you how powerful it is, and it helps you see your code as structure, not as just lines of text. So we support flow as well, and so flow types can get kind of gnarly, and like having to figure out how to format that can be kind of annoying. So you can just always make sure that your flow types are pretty. We support JSX, and so same thing with JSX. It will break the attributes if it doesn't fit and things like that. We actually have a contributor who's working on TypeScript support, so theoretically we should have TypeScript support pretty soon, which is pretty exciting. So there are 3 things that I want you to remember about why this is so critically important, in my opinion. Obviously, the first win is consistency, like across your code base and across your team. There are multiple ways to write different expressions like this. If you bump it too long, some people might break it differently. Prettier will make sure that it's totally consistent across your code base. So that's obviously a pretty big win. But I think there are some more interesting things that are coming out of this. The second thing is teachability. So for example, if you have this expression where you're mixing and or operations, Prettier will actually wrap the and expressions in parentheses to tell you that they have a higher precedence order than the or expression. And there are a lot of little places that we can do stuff like this that actually tell you information about your code because you reformatted it, because Prettier printed it as the ASC, as JavaScript engines will see it. We can actually tell you things about your code. And it actually turns out to be quite insightful. For example, there's another place where if you don't use semicolons and you do this comment pitfall, Prettier will actually show this, because that's how the JavaScript engine saw it, right? So you actually know, oh, I can't do that without semicolons. The third thing, which I think is probably the most interesting and most surprising to me, is just the freedom that you have to not have to be constrained by manually reformatting your code. Don't think, just write code. For example, here's an example where I'm restructuring some of my code. So I pulled out that code into its own function called getValue. All that I need to do is just paste it and just barely get the code working. And then I can just hit a keystroke and Prettier will automatically format it for you. So you can see how valuable this is when you're wrangling with a new idea with super complex code. You can just like deal with the structure of the code, and Prettier will actually make sure that it is actually formatted correctly as text. It's incredibly liberating. So there's some related work, obviously. There are some other formatters for other languages. Thank you to Jordan Walk for the Reason formatter. That's actually was a direct inspiration for this, because after using that, I just couldn't go back to JavaScript. And a note to thank Christopher Shadoke. He's actually been super helpful in pushing this forward and making it actually usable. He was actually here since the beginning. I actually didn't even have this working yet, and he like pushed this massive test suite and was just like, get this working. It's like, okay. So that's all. Actually, there is one more thing that I would like to officially announce, that we are supporting a new semicolon option in the future. So we don't have this yet, but we need to work on it. So thank you.
So please go check that out. We're going to have another lightning talk in a second, but first, James Long, are you back there? Can you come back up here just real quick? Yeah. Can you just go ahead and merge that pull request? Yes! React is now on Prettier. Awesome.